You know, I've always thought my friend Emily had it all. She's rich, smart, and super gorgeous. But me, well, I feel like I'm just hovering around average. I've never won any prizes and I have to work hard to get what I want. So no matter how hard I try to catch up with her, I just can't. But the other day, she opened up to me about her problems. Turns out her parents are never around and she's like super lonely. She's also struggling to keep up with her parents' expectations. And she said she's always envied me for how close I am with my parents. So I guess the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, huh? You know, my sister was really into this Mike guy. She thought he was sending her all these flirty signals. He would smile at her, make jokes, and even brushed against her hand once. She started imagining their future together, like going on dates and getting married, whatever. I told her, do not count your chickens before they hatch. But, of course, she wouldn't listen to me. But then one day, she saw Mike walking with this other girl, holding hands. Turns out she's Mike's girlfriend, and they've been together for like months. That's when she realized she had totally misread the situation. And now she's more careful about jumping to conclusions. There was this mean girl back in high school. She told a nasty rumor about me to one of her friends once, but guess what? Walls of ears. It got back to me. I was so mad, so I walked up to her and asked why she was talking trash about me. But she played all innocent as if she had no idea what I was talking about. I told her I knew everything. She tried to brush it off, but I could see she was like embarrassed. Since then, she avoided me until like graduation and I hadn't heard any more rumors. I guess she learned a lesson. You know, you never know who's listening, so watch what you say. So there's a senior at my new job. At first, I thought she was kind of weird and not really friendly because she would wear these odd outfits and barely said hello to anybody. But then we ended up sitting next to each other at the company get-together. Turns out she's actually really hilarious and super nice. She just has her own unique style, you know. And now she's one of my favorite colleagues at work. I realized we shouldn't really judge people by how they look or act at first. It was a total don't judge a book by its cover moment. I'm so glad that I got a chance to get to know her. About a year ago, something bad happened to my friend Tom. He was preparing for a civil service exam, but his girlfriend dumped him out of the blue. Turns out she cheated on him with a guy who drives a Porsche. He was devastated, feeling inferior, and like his ego was crushed. But he decided to use the frustration as a fuel to improve himself. Like, his heartbreak became a driving force to succeed. He studied harder than ever, determined to prove that he was better than this Porsche guy. And guess what? He aced the exam, he landed a good job. It turns out that losing his girlfriend was a blessing in disguise after all. Sometimes the worst situations can lead to the best outcomes like this. There was this guy I knew back in the day. He was always hanging out with his friends and barely paid any attention to his family. Then one day, he got into a big trouble when he was caught stealing from a store. You'd think his friends would have his back, right? But nope, they just bailed on him. However, his family was there for him. They reimbursed the store, comforted him, and even cooked him a delicious meal to help him move on. That's when it hit him that blood is thicker than water. He realized there is nothing better than his own family. Since then, he has been treating his parents with the love and respect they deserve. My brother recently got super ambitious. He joined a book club, started a part-time job, launched a YouTube channel, and even enrolled in a dance academy. I mean, I love how he puts his plans into action, but I can't help thinking he's doing too much. So I told him, hey, are you doing too much? Because you look exhausted. Don't bite off more than you can chew. He said it'd be fine, and he kept adding more to his plate. But soon enough, he started struggling to keep up with everything. And finally, he realized he needed to slow down and dropped a couple of activities. And now, he's more focused on what he's truly passionate about. My friend Julie never really studied until she started high school. As soon as her first semester began, she set a goal to get into Seoul National University, so she started preparing for the KSAT right away. But instead of intense studying, she committed to studying only for 4 hours a day. The rest of the time, she would relax or hang out with her friends. But she kept this up every single day for 3 years, even when she was sick or traveling. Some people would say 4 hours a day simply wasn't enough. They thought she should study 10 plus hours a day or pull all-nighters sometimes. But she believed consistency would pay off more than short bursts, saying many drops make a shower. And guess what? She proved them wrong. She absolutely nailed the exam and got accepted into her dream university. My friend Dylan was dating this guy who had this female friend he was super close with. They'd have dinner together, just the two of them, or even eat to bars. Of course, she wasn't cool with us, so she told him how she felt. But this dude just couldn't see why she was so pissed off. Dylan was so fed up, and she played her final card. She was like, how about you put yourself in my shoes for a sec? She asked him how it'd feel if she started hanging out with her guy friend, grabbing drinks and dinner. You could tell it sure hit him because he looked totally dumbfounded. And let's just say he was a lot more considerate after that. Funny how a little perspective can change things, huh? So, you know how I've been trying to master English, right? I've been binging on American TV shows, YouTube clips, reading books, and all that. Whenever I come across something that I didn't understand, I would immediately ask ChatGPT or look it up in online dictionaries. I'd have the answers in my hand instantly, and that made me think I had it all figured out. So I never bothered to review what I learned. Then the same stuff would come up later, and guess what? I couldn't recall as if I'd never come across it before. That's when it hit me. Easy come, easy go. Now I've been trying to avoid it because, after all, learning language isn't about quick fixes, right? You know, I've always dreamed of a luxury life. I love spending my free time strolling around the department stores, looking at all the luxury items around me. Expensive bags, designer clothes, elegant shoes, you name it. And don't even get me started on those shiny sports cars. And then I come home with all those pies in the sky still dancing in my mind. And in the evenings, I would kick back and watch vlogs of people living in those fancy apartments. It's inspiring, but a bit frustrating at the same time, knowing that it's just out of my reach. But I don't let it get me down for too long. I remind myself these are not just fantasies, but my goals. I'm determined to make it happen, and I know I will. You remember my ex-boyfriend, don't you? We had good times, but our fights were really tough. Whenever we argued, he'd always bring up past issues. Even stuff we had already resolved like ages ago, he'd always bring them back up. I think he was just trying to defend himself, but it just made everything worse. It felt like adding fuel to the fire, you know? I tried telling him, let sleeping dogs lie and stuff, but he wouldn't listen to me, but kept bringing up the past. That's one of the reasons why we couldn't make it work. I guess some people cannot just leave the past in the past. You know, when I was in high school, I used to notice these two groups of students. On one side, there were these kids who didn't follow the rules at all. They didn't listen to the teachers and wore whatever they wanted. And they even put on makeup when it was clearly not allowed. And the worst part, they'd always smoke or ask other students for money. Then there was this other group, totally different. These students were always studying, reviewing the lesson. They were never rude, came to school on time, and wore clean uniforms. This reminded me of the saying, birds of a feather flock together. I guess it really is true that we are like the people we spend time with. During my freshman year, one of my club buddies accidentally sent a text full of gossip about a senior to our group chat. And to make the matters worse, that senior was in the group chat too. Back then, there was no unsend or delete feature in that app. Now, it wasn't mean gossip, just him complaining about the workload the senior kept dumping on him. But the damage was done, so he apologized right away. And another friend filled me in later. At first, he was seriously beating himself up about it. But a wise friend told him, there's no use crying over spilled milk. Well, it took him some time to bounce back, but he learned his lessons, and now he double-checks his text before hitting send. Usually, in team projects, everyone tries to do the bare minimum, right? But this group project I had in my marketing class was a whole different thing. Everyone wanted to be the leader. Each person has their own ideas about everything. the presentation style, the PowerPoint design, and how to arrange the slides. But no one was willing to compromise. So in the end, we just divided the work and each did their own part. And then we combined all together right before the presentation. But you know what people say? Too many cooks spoil the broth. Let's just say the result was a disaster and our professor wasn't impressed. So I've got this buddy who was never really successful in blind dates. He'd probably been on at least like 20 blind dates by his late 20s. Sometimes he'd make it to a second or even third date, but the girls always ended up saying no. It got to the point where he felt completely drained and he thought he'd be single forever. I'd tell him, dude, don't give up, every Jack is his Jill. But he'd had enough and just decided to focus on his career. After a while, he went on his last blind date, and it was totally different from any other blind dates he'd ever been on. They clicked right at that moment as if they were made for each other. And now, their wedding is in 2 hours, so I really gotta get going. My boyfriend's always well-mannered, calm, and positive. He never raises his voice and has a kind word to say, always. I've always wondered where he got that from. Well, I finally met his parents last weekend. I gotta tell you, it was like seeing my boyfriend mirrored in them. His father was so polite and positive, just like him, and his mother, well, she was positivity personified. Now it all makes sense. My boyfriend got his great attitude from them. It's really true what they say, like father, like son. I think this good manners definitely run in his family because I heard his brother's also well-behaved. You know, growing up in the countryside, I was like a big fish in a small pond. Honestly, I thought I was the goat, the greatest of all time. I always killed it in my classes, and everyone told me I was the prettiest girl in the town. But things changed after I turned 20 and moved to Seoul. I mean, Seoul is a melting pot of talent, right? Once I got there, I realized I wasn't as amazing as I thought. I began to feel like a little fish in a big pond. It also made me realize how much I needed to grow and improve. So that's when I really started working on myself, building my inner strength and humility. Now I'm a completely different person and I want to stick to the new me. There's this old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Basically, it means you can give someone an opportunity, but it's up to them to take advantage of it. It takes me back to my teenage years. Back then, all I wanted was to be a dancer. But my parents wanted me to study hard and land a job in big companies. So they got me a competent tutor and signed me up for pricey after-school classes. But I wasn't interested, so I would play hooky and practice dancing instead. So they were leading me to water, but it wasn't the kind of water that I wanted to drink. I think a lot of education in modern society ends up being like this. So if they want their horse to be happy, I think they gotta figure out what water he actually wants to drink. Hey, do you remember the guy from the gym? The one who always brags about how much he can lift and all his fitness knowledge? He almost sounds like he wrote a book on fitness. Anyway, one day, this quiet newbie showed up in the gym. But of course, our know-it-all couldn't resist showing off his expertise. But this quiet dude just nodded politely as he listened, and then he headed over to the weights. And guess what? He started lifting the weights like a pro. Man, you should have seen the look on his face. So I learned firsthand that the loudest ones aren't always the strongest. Just like they say, empty vessels make the most sound.